On January 20th, 1981, Ronald Reagan was inaugurated as the 40th President of the United States, following a sweeping electoral victory. Known for his charisma and background as a Hollywood actor and governor of California, Reagan promised a new dawn for America. He began his term with an ambitious conservative economic plan, focusing on tax cuts and tackling historic inflation. But just 12 days into his administration, on February 1, Reagan stunned the nation and the world with a prime-time televised address. Declaring his commitment to conservative values, he issued an executive order mandating a forced return to the 1950s. Every technology, TV show, film, and innovation created after 1960 was banned overnight. By the morning of February 2nd, America descended into chaos. Bank networks froze, airline reservations crashed, and Wall Street halted its operations because microchips first invented in the late 1960s were now illegal. That same day, Reagan issued the Khrushchev Order. Frustrated by the mounting economic chaos and desperate to restore order, he sought to simplify America's foreign policy by harking back to the perceived clarity of the 1950s. Since Nikita Khrushchev was the Soviet leader during that era, Reagan decreed that all current and future Soviet leaders would be referred to as Khrushchev in official government communications. He believed this would symbolically reinforce America's stance against Soviet influence and reassert the Cold War boundaries of a simpler time. Offended by this, Soviet General Secretary Leonid Brezhnev placed the Soviet nuclear arsenal on high alert, convinced that the American president was not mentally sound. The crisis escalated on February 4, when Soviet Foreign Minister Andrei Gromyko came to the White House. Reagan addressed him exclusively as Khrushchev throughout the meeting, prompting Gromyko to storm out and warn of severe repercussions. Behind closed doors, Reagan's cabinet began drafting documents to invoke the 25th Amendment. Before they could act, Reagan learned of the plan. On February 8, he convened an emergency meeting, confronting his cabinet with forceful rhetoric and threats of dismissal. Vice President George H.W. Bush and other cabinet members backed down, shaken by the possibility of mass firings during a Cold War crisis. With executive leadership in turmoil, the judiciary intervened. On February 15, the Supreme Court fast-tracked hearings on the technology ban and Khrushchev order. Just 2 days later, the court unanimously struck down both directives, ruling that the president could not outlaw human progress by executive order. Reagan refused to back down. On February 18, he publicly denounced the Supreme Court and Congress, calling for a Maoist-style cultural revolution to purge them as communist sympathizers. Violent clashes erupted nationwide as his supporters battled with opponents, forcing state governors to deploy the National Guard. Congress acted swiftly. On February 19, House Speaker Tip O'Neill and Republican leader Robert Michel bypassed standard procedures, presenting a single article of impeachment, inciting insurrection and subverting the Constitution. The House voted 396 to 38 to impeach Reagan, with Republicans abandoning the president. Between February 20 and 24, the nation endured a tense power vacuum. The Senate postponed proceedings to secure the Capitol, while the Pentagon quietly instructed commanders to disregard Reagan's nuclear authority. On February 25, the Senate reconvened and voted 90-10 to remove Reagan from office. By noon, George H.W. Bush was sworn in as the 41st president. Reagan, after serving just 36 days, was escorted to a medical facility, making him the second shortest-serving president in American history, surpassed only by William Henry Harrison's 31-day tenure. Historians consider Reagan the most disastrous president in U.S. history because his decisions led to an immediate collapse of America's critical infrastructure, triggered massive civil unrest, and brought the world to the brink of nuclear conflict. His disregard for constitutional limits and provocative foreign policy nearly destroyed public trust in American democracy within just 36 days in office.